The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the Light Brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldiers knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell. Boldly they rode and well, into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. Flest all their savours bear, flest as they turn in air, savouring the gunners there, charging an army, while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Kazakh and Russian reeled from the saber stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed it with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honour the charge they made, honour the Light Brigade, noble 600. Hello everyone. Today I am bringing to you a new video on the poem The Charge of the Light Brigade, written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Before I dive into the poem, let me introduce to you the poet. Alfred Lord Tennyson was a British poet. He was born in 1809 and he died in 1892. He was one of the most prominent poets of the Victorian era, which means he lived when Queen Victoria was ruling over England. He was a poet laureate. Poet laureate means someone who has been appointed by the government to compose poems for special events or occasions. Some of his poems, famous poems, include The Charge of the Light Brigade, Crossing the Bar, Ulysses, The Lady of Shalott, and In Memoriam. The poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade, is based on a real incident. It happened during the Battle of Balaclava, which took place on 25th October 1854. The battle took place between Russia on one side and a military alliance among three nations, namely Turkey, Great Britain, and France. This poem celebrates it glorifies the heroism, the exemplary courage and devotion to duty of a small unit of British cavalry soldiers. The British cavalry unit received an order to launch a frontal attack on the enemy, and the enemy was a huge Russian army stationed in a valley, equipped with sophisticated weapons and lethal firepower. Now, it was an unequal battle. The British soldiers, the British cavalry unit consisted only of 600 soldiers, and they were armed with sabers. The word saber means a heavy cavalry sword with a carved blade. Now, the Russian had a huge army, and they were well fortified and well equipped with heavy artillery and lethal firepower. So it was an unequal battle because the British soldiers were heavily outnumbered and outgunned. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll explain each line to you. So please pay attention and stay tuned. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward. All in the valley of death rode the 600. Now the word league is an old measure of distance. A league is equal to 3 miles, so half a league is equal to 1.5 miles. Now here the poet tells us that the British soldiers, they moved for about 1.5 miles before they reached the valley where the enemy soldiers were waiting for them. All in the valley of death rode the 600. The 600 soldiers of the British cavalry unit, as soon as they received the order, they marched into the valley. Now, why is the valley called the valley of death? Well, to enter the valley was to court certain death, because the enemy soldiers were well fortified and they were armed with heavy artillery. So to enter the valley was like staring death in the face, and that is why it has been called the valley of death. Forward, the light brigade. Charge for the guns, he said. Now, who is he? Refer to here. He refers to the commander of the British cavalry unit. Now, it is the commander who gave the order that his soldiers must move ahead and attack the enemy soldiers who were waiting for them in the valley. He asked them to attack the gunners. Gunners were the Russian soldiers who were operating the cannons in the valley. Into the valley of death rode the 600. So the moment the British soldiers received the order, they started marching ahead without wasting any moment. Now let's move on to the second stanza. Forward, the light brigade. Was there a man dismayed? So when they received this order from their leader, from their superior officer, were they dismayed? The word dismayed means were they shocked or horrified? Were they frightened when they received this order? Because to obey the order meant certain death. Not though the soldiers knew someone had blundered. No, the soldiers, they were not frightened. They were not dismayed. They knew very well that their officer had made a fatal mistake. The word someone here refers to their leader, the commander of the light brigade. They knew that their officer had made a fatal mistake. Yet They did not show any fear. They did not try to go against his order. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Now these three lines are very, very important. They tell us about the duty of a soldier. A soldier is duty bound to obey the order of his superior officer unquestioningly. Even though he knows that his leader has made a mistake, he cannot question the rationale of his leader's decision. Theirs but to do and die. They have only two options before them. Either they have to fight the battle and win the battle, or they have to die. They have to make the supreme sacrifice in the battlefield. Into the valley of death rode the 600. So the 600 soldiers of the British cavalry unit, when they received the order, without blinking an eye, without flinching, without showing any fear, they marched into the valley, even though they knew that certain death was awaiting them there. Let's now take up the third stanza. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered. So the moment they entered the valley, they came under heavy artillery fire. They were surrounded on three sides. In front of them, right of them, and left of them. That means they were surrounded on three sides. And cannons were firing shells simultaneously. So they came under heavy artillery fire. Volleyed. The word volleyed means a large number of shells being fired at the same time. Thundered. You know, when a shell is fired, it makes deafening noise. So here it means ear-splitting sound. Stormed it with shot and shell. So the 600 soldiers of the British cavalry unit came under heavy artillery fire. They were being hit, they were being struck by bullets and shells, because bullets were flying all around and shells were exploding all around. So they were being hit by bullets and shrapnels from the shells. Boldly they rode and well into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell. But even though they came under heavy artillery fire, they marched ahead boldly. Boldly means fearlessly, courageously, without showing any fear at all. They did not try to run away from the battlefield. Instead, they marched ahead. Into the mouth of hell rode the 600. Look, jaws of death, mouth of hell. These two expressions, they refer to the same idea. It means certain death. The word hell is associated with suffering. So these 600 soldiers, when they entered the valley, they faced immense suffering in the form of certain death and terrible injuries. Now we'll move on to the next stanza. Flest all their savors bear, flest as they turn in air. I've already told you that the soldiers of the Light Brigade, they were armed with sabers. The word saber, let me explain the meaning to you once again, means a heavy cavalry sword with a carved blade. So the 600 English soldiers, they were on horseback and they were brandishing, they were waving the sword in the air. Their naked sword. Sabers bear means naked swords. And fleshed means they were glinting. As they waved their swords in the air above their heads, the swords were glinting in the sunlight. They were sending out flashes of light. Severing the gunners there, charging an army, while all the world wondered. So severing the gunners here refers to the Russian soldiers who are operating the heavy artillery. So they were severing them. Severing them means they were slaughtering them with their swords. So they managed to break through the enemy line, and then they started slaughtering the Russian soldiers who were operating the cannons. Charging an army. Look at the word army. It signifies a huge number. I have already told you that the British soldiers, they were heavily outnumbered. There were just 600 of them, whereas they were facing a huge army. While all the world wondered. So when the people of the world came to know about this attack, when they came to know about this battle and the exemplary courage and bravery shown by the 600 British soldiers, they were filled with a great sense of wonder. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Plunged in the battery smoke means they were covered in smoke emitted by a large number of cannons. The Russian soldiers were armed with a large number of cannons, and as these cannons were firing shells, they were emitting smoke. So the British soldiers, they marched through the smoke-filled valley and they managed to breach the enemy line. They were able to penetrate the battle formations. Cossack and Russian reeled from the saber stroke. Now Cossack, they are a tribe and they are famous for their warrior skills. They were also part of the Russian army. Now the Russian soldiers, they were reeling from the saber stroke. That means as the British soldiers started hitting or started striking the Russian soldiers with their sabers, they lost their balance and they started staggering, shattered and sundered. So under the blow from the British soldiers, the Russian soldiers were shattered. Shattered means broken into pieces. Here it means they were cut into pieces. Sundered means split wide open. So the Russian soldiers were badly mutilated. They suffered heavy casualties when they were attacked by the British soldiers. Then they rode back, but not the 600. So after inflicting heavy losses on the Russian army, the 600 British soldiers, not all of them, those who survived, they started retreating. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon behind them volleyed and thundered. Even as they were retreating from the battlefield, even as they were coming out of the valley, they were still under heavy artillery fire. They were still under fire from three sides. So even as they retreated, they were dropping dead. Stormed it with shot and shell while horse and hero fell. Look at the word hero here. You know that a hero is someone with extraordinary abilities. These 600 British soldiers were indeed extraordinary. So even as they were retreating, horses and soldiers, they were dropping dead. They that fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. These 600 British soldiers, they fought fearlessly and fiercely. And then those who survived, they were coming back. They were coming back after cheating death because they had survived. So it was like cheating death. They were coming out of the valley. So they were coming out of the mouth of hell. They were coming out of the jaws of death. They had survived death. All that was left of them, left of 600. Not all the 600 soldiers survived. Very few survived. Very few managed to come back alive. Most of them, they were decimated. The majority of them perished in the battlefield. Now the final stanza. When can their glory fade? Here the poet is telling us that their glory, their fame, it means the fame of the Light Brigade, will never fade away. They have become immortal because of their exemplary courage and bravery. Oh, the wild charge they made. Here he's recalling that attack that they had launched on the Russian army. It was a wild charge. Why is it called a wild charge? Because it was a desperate attempt on the part of the British soldiers. They knew that they were staring death in the face, so they gave it their all. And in the end, a handful of the British soldiers managed to survive. All the world wondered. So when the people of the world came to know about their bravery in the battlefield, their exemplary courage, they were filled with a sense of awe. Honored the charge they made, honored the Light Brigade. So here the poet is telling us to pay tributes, to pay homage to the memory of the 600 British soldiers, because they deserve our highest praise. They deserve the highest accolades for the supreme sacrifice that they have made. Noble 600. And he ends the poem by calling the 600 British soldiers noble. Now, why does he call them noble? Because they did their duty unquestioningly. They did their duty even at the cost of their lives. They made the supreme sacrifice in the field, in the battlefield. So, they are indeed noble. And this brings us to the end of the poem. Let me now provide you with a summary of the poem. The British cavalry unit consisted of 600 soldiers. They received an order from their superior officer to launch a military offensive against their enemy, the Russian army, who were stationed in a valley which was about 1.5 miles away from them. When they received this order, they realized immediately that their officer had made a fatal mistake, yet they carried out the order. They did not flinch, they did not show any fear, they did not try to run away from the battlefield. To enter the valley was like entering the valley of death. It was like entering the jaws of death. It was like the mouth of hell. They were well exposed. They were surrounded on 3 sides, and shells were raining down on them. Yet they did not flinch. They did not backtrack. They rushed through the smoke-filled valley, and they breached the enemy line, and they started slaughtering the Russian soldiers who were operating the heavy artillery. After inflicting heavy losses on them, they retreated, but in the process, they suffered heavy casualties. The Light Brigade was almost decimated. Only a handful of soldiers survived and managed to come back alive. When the world came to know about their heroism, their exemplary courage, their sense of duty, their loyalty, and the supreme sacrifice that they made in the battlefield, they were filled with a sense of wonder and awe. And the poet rounds up the poem by asking the readers to pay their tribute, to pay their homage to the memory of the 600 British soldiers who made the supreme sacrifice in the battlefield. he tells us that these 600 British soldiers are noble and they deserve our highest accolades, our highest honor. Now, before I end this video, I want to turn my attention to the poetic devices and the figures of speech used in this poem. I'll discuss 3 figures of speech or poetic devices, namely alliteration, imagery, and anaphora. Let me start with imagery. The word imagery means the use of language in poems in order to create a powerful, vivid image in the mind of the reader. As far as this poem is concerned, the expressions, the valley of death, the jaws of death, the mouth of hell, these are examples of imagery because they create a powerful and striking image in our minds. Next, let us focus on alliteration. Alliteration means a repetition of the same letter or sound at the beginning of adjacent or well-connected words. Let me give you an example. Donald Duck. Look at these 2 words, Donald Duck. Each of these words begins with the letter D. Donald, D. Duck, it begins with D. So this is an example of alliteration. Let me give you one more example. The 7 sisters slept soundly on the sand. Now here, the words 7 sisters slept soundly on the sand. Each of these words begins with the letter S. So the letter has been repeated at the beginning of each of these words. So this is an example of alliteration. Now when it comes to the poem, the line storm dead with shot and shell is an example of alliteration because look at the word stormed, it begins with S, shot, it begins with S, shell, it begins with S. So this is an example of alliteration. Let me give you one more example. All the world wondered. Now here the 2 words world and wondered. Each of these 2 words begins with the letter W. So this is also an example of alliteration. Now thirdly, anaphora. Now anaphora is the repetition of the same word in successive or consecutive lines. Let me give you an example from the poem. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them. These 3 lines begin with the word cannon. So it is repeated at the beginning of each line. And so this is an example of anaphora. I hope the poetic devices or the figures of speech that I've discussed here are clear to you. This brings us to the end of this video. I'm going to call it a wrap here. Take good care of yourself. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Bye for now.